Beaming out across the galaxy, this is where conspiracy on the wild side meets the perspective of a lifetime. This is the Free Zone with your host, Freeman.
Hello and welcome to the Free Zone. Well, you know what? NASA's not backing down. The asteroid threat is consistent. Their message to us is it's not if, but when the asteroid destroys all life on planet Earth. What are we going to do? I mean, are we in such a disarray that this state has brought us to the point where we would don our Nike shoes, pull up a purple shroud, and drink the Kool-Aid poison to hopefully jump into the spaceship Mothership following a comet like Hale-Bopp? What would it take for you to join Heaven's Gate cult? What would it take for us to believe that maybe the Gnostics have it right and we live in hell and there's a better place to go? Well, we're going to dig into this tonight with Miguel Connor. His website is The God Above God. He is host of Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio. He is author, heretic, and a game-changing mystic coming out to join us here on the Free Zone. Hey, Miguel, it's always great to have you on.
Oh, thanks for having me. Glad to be back. And yeah, great intro. Again, it's kind of weird because I'm like, I feel I should be doing the intro and jumping on you with questions, but here we are.
Well, maybe we can do a little back and forth. You know, we're both hosts and we're both guests. So
there you go.
It's an interesting world. Yeah. I'm kind of happy being the host at this point. You know, I don't have to be yes every day. I get to rely on you.
Yes. By the grace of our guests go we, don't we?
Yes. But you know, what strange times and how much stranger could it possibly get? I mean, to just jump right back to the concept of being able to join Heaven's Gate and, you know, grab this purple shroud, put on your brand new Nikes and say, I'm going to the mothership. Give me that poison. I can't imagine, you know, that shocked me. What kind of mindset does it take for people to join in the end of the world, you know?
Yeah, that event affected me, of course, like everyone else when it happened. The interesting thing is I was actually at my alma mater, St. Thomas University in Houston. And I'd already graduated, but back then I was Catholic, so I was going to church and other festivities in those days. And what's his name? Applewhite was actually a professor of humanities. Yeah, Marshall Applewhite was a professor of humanities at St. Thomas University in Houston, Texas. So when I was there, when it happened, it was Easter. It was Easter week. So the media was just flooding the university, and it's run by priests, and they were, of course, furious. They were furious because of the disruption of Easter, and of course, they was furious because to them this was just bad religion. So it certainly affected me. I have studied Heaven's Gate, not as a lot of friends and colleagues who really take a deep dive, but I would say that they are definitely one of the modern Gnostic manifestations of our time. And but at the end of the day, I think they got it wrong at the end. And I don't want to criticize because I like to study not just ancient Gnostic religions, but how Gnosticism manifests itself throughout history and how it looks in modern times as a reaction to the culture around it. I mean, as I was thinking, I mean, the ancient Gnostics, there's really nothing like them except perhaps some of the unbroken lineages like the Druze or the Yesidi or the Mendians, but things are going to change. I mean, like, for example, the Cathars. The Cathars are considered part of that stream of Gnosis, or that tree of Gnosis Jan Culiano talked about, the great Gnostic scholar and really magic scholar. But the Cathars had already given up the concept of Gnosis. We don't seem to find it, and replaced it with faith. And they had, instead of that ancient demiurge, the fierce demiurge of the ancient Gnostics, that replaced him with Satan, even though he had the same roles, creating the world, keeping us trapped in an illusion and all that. So these things change. And well, I feel like I'm going on a huge tangent. Is it too soon there? Or
No, it's very intriguing because, we all need to get our head around what Gnosticism is. So, I mean, we've discussed it, so you're putting a good example out there, in the idea that in original Gnosticism, Yahweh's kind of the beast, if you will, and then the Cathars come in and they alter this just to the point where the beast becomes Satan instead of
right.
Yahweh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
they were just
how does that relate to
drawing
Heaven's
upon
Gate?
oh yeah, they were just drawing upon the mythology around them. And I mean, in Gnosticism, obviously, it's sort of basic. The core tenets: we are trapped in this world, often trapped in our bodies. There is a spark of divinity that has become trapped or dormant. And this is not done as Eastern religions because of God trying to know Himself or that other stuff, but we are trapped here on purpose by these higher authorities or tyrant beings, and only through an awakening, usually stimulated by a Gnostic revealer, can we awaken to our destiny, which is beyond the stars, beyond this wheel of death and rebirth, and you might say escape our bodies, if you would. But that's where
Right.
Heaven's Gate went wrong. I mean, right there, we can start looking at Heaven's Gate. What were they trying to do? They were trying to do this, basically commit suicide and get their souls or their consciousness to go towards the comet Hale-Bopp. And of course, when you watch some of their videos, they are talking, it seems very Gnostic. We're trapped in our bodies, this shell, this clothing, blah, blah, blah. And we'll just go to this wonderful paradise or complete state of consciousness and all that. And right there, I mean, that right there is one authentic manifestation of Gnosticism in modern times. And Chris Knowles, in his Secret Sun blog, he does a great job in breaking down Heaven's Gate and their Gnostic aspects. But what happens is they really miss the point. And I think that's what a lot of these Gnostic cults tend to do, because people always just have this, caricature that the Gnostics just hated the world and they wanted to escape their bodies and get past the demiurge or Satan or the architect from the Matrix or whoever the villain is in their myths, or whoever the villain is in our cultural surroundings. But one thing that is completely missed, and their texts say this, and their texts are pretty clear on it, is it's not about escaping the world, it's about transformation. The Gnostics, for example, if Heaven's Gate was truly Gnostic, they would have gone up to the Hale-Bopp comet and then found these energies, this wisdom, this power, and brought it back to the world to transform themselves and hopefully transform others. That's where it's a missing thing. I mean, the Gnostics had a very you could say Judo-Christian idea of compassion, of helping the world. So escaping the world ultimately was a cop-out. And again, that's where Heaven's Gate miss it. I think to understand the Gnostics, to really understand it in their idea of gnosis and direct knowledge of higher worlds, you have to understand that they also wanted an experience. They wanted this alchemical experience that would transform them. At the core, the Gnostics were shamanistic, and I think what they really wanted more than anything was this sense of ecstasy. And you read it in their texts. I mean, they are gripped by this ecstasy, this passion, this joy, because they have realized that we are fully divine beings. We can experience these amazing powers and forces from above, and it could transform us, and we can become, as Carl Jung would say, individuated to help others. So I think that's where Heaven's Gate might have, you might say, they missed the comet on this one. But at the same time, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong, and they're right now in some wonderful ecstasy in another galaxy. Who knows?
We really don't know, do we?
No.
I can't remember what it was that inspired the thought of the mothership behind Hale-Bopp. Do you remember any of that?
No, again, I've done some research, but I haven't taken that deep dive into it. I know they began more sort of this eclectic, esoteric group, And then I think when it was one of the founder, Bonnie Nettles, who passed away, I think Marshall Applewhite just sort of, he changed and it became much more apocalyptic. And of course, that's another thing that always keeps a lot of these cults going is an end of the world, an eschathon or something like that. And we got to do it and we got to get out. So that's when things really took a left turn towards this, again, fully Gnostic vibe. And I should tell your listeners, they might be saying, well, doesn't this stuff bother you? And I'm like, no, because as I've come to learn, you have Gnostic manifestations, just like you might have the Greco-Roman pagan manifestations today, and Wicca is a manifestation of more ancient fertility rites and so forth like that. But any idea or religion, no matter how pure or interesting it is, or how it might have been ethical in those days, can be weaponized. And not only weaponized, but weaponized well, so that those at the top can use it to control others, to become their own gurus and so forth. So I would say that Gnosticism can certainly be weaponized. In fact, I was just thinking I was going to wait a little later, but when you look at some of the really, I mean, we live in some secular times. The idea of any new religion coming out in this last generation might be alien, right? I think people are just done with religions. There's revivals and all that, but there's really no new religions in the last generation. But then when I was looking at some of these Gnostic cults, and I would say Scientology, Heaven's Gate might have been something. They certainly left their footprint on culture and history for all time's sakes, for humor and all that. But then you look at individuals like David Icke, A Course in Miracles, and what was it? And Scientology. These are very new movements, and they have, I mean, again, we are talking about secular times where nothing's going to explode, or you can't go on a jihad and convert people by the sword, or send people to the Inquisition. You gotta convince people one person at a time. But all these groups are definitely Gnostic, modern Gnostic manifestations, and they have all had a huge, and they're new. They came out in the last generation. They've all had a huge impact, at points having millions of followers and making a lot of money or having a lot of impact. I mean, you look at David Icke. There's a statistic from I forget what the statistic from. I read it in the Guardian that today 12 million Americans believe alien lizards rule humanity. That's a lot of people. And again, when you think about the millions who follow A Course in Miracles, Scientology, I mean, this weaponizing Gnosticism is actually been very profitable and impactful in our modern times.
Without a doubt. And extraterrestrial does seem to be the guiding force of, I mean, you know, it takes something pretty desperate generally to get somebody to join a religion or a belief system of any kind. You know, you usually got to be at your bottom rung, often, you know, just have nowhere else to go. I don't see where affluent people tend to just go, well, I think I'm going to join the church today. It, you know?
Yeah. No. I mean, I think you hit it on the head. The idea of aliens, the idea of that we are controlled, that we are trapped in the body, how Gnosticism works so well in the digital era with the idea of different levels of reality, how confusing and existential life has become. These sort of stuff that the Gnostics were warning about years ago, I think speak well to people today. And I think I would say, of course, I'm sort of part of the club. I would say most human beings, when they do some research like today, or they experience so much, whether you're rich or poor, you're traveling, you're doing stuff, you're going to find that you feel alienated. And we do live in times where alienation, especially, it's fueled by social media. It seems to make us more alone, and the internet, and huge population. A lot of people are feeling alienated, and again, Gnosticism really always speaks to our alienation, our being cast into this world, how we can belong somewhere else, and that we are somehow part of something bigger and better. And of course, when you read the ancient Gnostic texts, and that's another one I think people have completely missed. It looks like Heaven's Gate might have not, they got the vibe, but the Gnostic texts are basically giant stargates and giant star maps. Yeah, point by point, it's talking about taking these voyages through different zodiacs and star systems and going through these, you might say, again, stargates into other dimensions. I mean, it's right there 2,000 years ago. And again, going back to the work of Chris Knowles, even the Mendians, these baptizing marsh Arabs, as they call from Iraq, who sadly have suffered so much under Western imperialism and fundamentalist Islam, when you even look at their texts, it's all about traveling the stars and going through other galaxies. So that right there, of course, jives perfectly in our modern days of science fiction and space travel. And again, I'm sure that speaks to people because, again, part of the Gnostic vibe is to be able to go reach the stars and go beyond the stars.
Right.
But there's bad guys, right? I mean, again, not all aliens are the good guys, and of course, the Gnostic answer is the Archons. These terrible. I guess they're not. I would say they're not the lizard people. The lizard people are the hybrids, but these beings beyond that basically control the universe, possibly put us down on Earth. Well, in the Gnostic text, yes, they kind of created us and engineered us, but in modern times, you could call them those ancient aliens who basically created a prison planet and are keeping us here to farm us. Although in ancient times, the Gnostics would say it's they're taking our divine spark because it fuels the universe. But in a modern time, it would be these aliens are here to experiment upon us and feed upon us and all that good stuff.
Yeah, we're pretty much right at that point again. You know, if we start to analyze what's going on life on planet Earth right now in the modern technological state of, killer robots, gene splicing, cloning, glow-in-the-dark cats, chimera, dogs and cats living together, craziness, right? I mean, it's not too hard to see. I mean, we had the genetically modified children, Lulu and Nana. Now, first of all, those names always strike me because Lulu was the Sumerian name for the created being that the Gnostics would, call human. And Nana, of course, Inanna, and going back to Lord Sin in the Sumerian. And then these babies were genetically crafted by CRISPR technology. And then they are suddenly found, they were genetically modified in order to keep them from getting AIDS, but it turned out that this modification gave them cognitive abilities that were beyond normal. And so here we are again, starting, do you own a being like that? Do you patent its DNA? Is it yours when you create it like that? And you go all the way back, and here we are again. It's like bringing it back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It says the sins of the father.
Yeah.
We're doing no better than the gods that we're supposed to be escaping from and trying to offer something better. And what we come is these twisted experiments in the Gnostic Gospels. When the demiurge creates Adam, he's like this worm that he can't move around. He's an idiot. It's only when Sophia, the mother of heaven, gives him the spirit, can he move? And of course, you can relate to that to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which many have said is very much a Gnostic gospel, because again, it's the idea of we being demiurges and trying to create, mostly out of pride, mostly to have something to control, something to love us, and the results are always disastrous, and that doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. Yeah, the whole idea, all this CRISPR, transhuman and stuff, I think it's folly. It's just, and we call Heaven's Gate crazy. I mean, we're bringing about our own doom.
Well, that's just it, right? A lot of people feel like if they were to bring about the end of the world, then we can finally rapture and ascend and all the good stuff comes. If we could just hurry up with the apocalypse, right? I mean, that's you see that in the Avengers, right? I mean, it's right there in the popular culture for everyone to think about and to say, yeah, we're definitely at the end. I mean, we got, again, killer robots, genetically modified beings, chimera, and all of that. And Satan obviously rules, and so we need to end this. And so often that turns into a weaponized cult.
Yeah, it's definitely to exploit us. But I would say there's no. I think what's that book on the life of Jim Morrison? No one here gets out alive. I don't. Our overlords own our asses. They own our souls, and they own this reality. Death is not going to be an escape. Our consciousness will be utilized or transferred somewhere else. Maybe another planet. I'm speculating, or another life form. Maybe I'm talking a little crazy, but I think I know in my gut we're not going to escape by getting on a comet or bringing about the apocalypse, all that. Again, I keep going to the idea of gnosis and transformation and just being filled with the greatest ecstasy you can think of. I think that's it. That is freedom. It's an inner game. That's where the game is won.
Well, it sounded like you were describing the Mormons.
Well, I mean, it's not, as my guest Scott Smith has shown, and I forgot who wrote the book American Religion. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I'm not going to look at Google and cheat. Harold Bloom, yay! Harold Bloom wrote how Mormonism certainly could be considered a modern Gnostic religion. I mean, in Mormonism, you certainly, when you die, you incarnate in other dimensions, perhaps other planets. In Mormonism, humans are pre-existent divine creatures who end up on this earth. Where they would separate from the Gnostics, obviously, is that this is not a prison or a machinery, the black iron prison that Philip K. Dick wrote about, but this is sort of a learning ground. So yeah, you could make an argument that Mormonism shares a lot of aspects with Gnosticism. So again, I keep going back to when you weaponize Gnosticism, you can get a lot out of a population.
Yeah. I mean, Mormonism basically is extraterrestrial Freemasonry. And
well said.
We've seen what Freemasonry can do around the planet. Would you consider that also a Gnostic ideal in Freemasonry?
I wouldn't. I know my colleague Mo Bernard from Gnostic Warrior would disagree. I think what we have is the Gnostics are the perennial rebels who got crushed. That is sort of their archetypal image. They're the ones that people who were educated in the Middle Age and Enlightenment read about, who were these individualistic anarchist shamans who really stood up to the Roman, the Christian, the Jewish, and the Muslim authorities and told them there's a better way and the way is within you and these constructs are bad, and they were crushed. So the Gnostics in many ways inspired a lot of these secret societies, and of course because they had a lot of this esoteric knowledge, this mystery school information. They certainly were an inspiration. They certainly had ideas and magic and other stuff that inspired a lot of the secret societies of the time. And throughout history, they probably saw a lot of kinship with the Gnostics because, I mean, again, these were the good guys who were pacifists, who were brutally crushed once upon a time. It's one of the great historical unfair treatments, if you would. In fact, you might say, some have said, for example, that it was Marcion, the great heretic, and he was sort of, you could say he was semi-Gnostic. He was the one who proposed creating a Bible, and his teaching might have created the church, because the church or the other Christians said, man, we need to react and corporatize this religion and all that. And some have said, yes, it was the Gnostics. The church is a reaction to Gnosticism, which probably was pre-Christian as far as I've been able to research. And because this stuff is scary, the idea that the answers are within you, the answers that you are divine, that you can find ways to become a complete divine being who can be of complete help to others. That's pretty scary for religions. In fact, I don't know if your listeners know this, but most people are not aware that the Inquisition, the dreaded Inquisition of the church, was created first to destroy the Cathars. That's why the Inquisition was created. once the Cathars and the Crusades against the Cathars were done and they've been wiped out, the Inquisition simply moved on to other, you might say, unwanted elements like women and Jews and so forth. So again, the Gnostic vibe of research really scares, really makes the Orthodox react in terrible ways, and as we've been talking, once you weaponize, really can create something dark or sometimes something wonderful.
Yeah, that really is part of my biggest problem is having to sit back and follow a priestcraft, to have somebody up there that everybody's idolizing and worshiping. And I know he's just a man, and it irks me. It really does. I think that's my biggest problem with churches.
Right.
Minister.
Yeah, I mean, again, another mistake I think is people, whenever they study the Gnostics or the Cathars or the Kabbalists or the Sufis or all their manifestations throughout history, they simply assume, well, I can do it alone. And I think it's a rule for anybody who wakes up, takes the red pill, is I need help. I need a lot of help.
Right.
And we need each other. We need other human beings to wake up so we can take that trek home. And of course, as scholars have posited, Gnosticism might have begun with these ancient Egyptian priests who still held on to the very old mysteries, who were thriving in Alexandria before the times of Jesus. And dissatisfied Jews, dissatisfied pagans would go to them to learn this lore, which was being lost across the world. And that's how the first Gnostic groups began. And of course, but again, I think the way Gnosticism works is it's never going to be a big movement because it's about the initiate, it's about choices. Again, I'm talking about these long drawn out spells, this idea that you have to embrace knowledge and all its forms so you can understand the world itself, the idea that you're not going to be led by the hand, that you have to figure out your own road out here, even if you get help. So most Gnostic groups were always, you might say, small lodges. You had a guru here, a Gnostic hierophant, and you had his little group, I think, sometimes like with Marcus the Magician, who thrived in Spain in the 2nd century. He actually had, you might say, a coven. His followers were all women, and they were doing all these rituals, entheogenic rituals in Spain, which of course really pissed off the church fathers of the time. So yeah. So again, we need help, but the way is still inside of you, and the way is way out.
Well, everybody wants something bigger to happen. Everybody's waiting for the UFOs to arrive, or even an asteroid threat, something to cast them into a bigger picture and, you know, play a bigger role in this life on planet Earth. Where it's like everybody's just hanging out waiting for the big rock to drop, you know?
Yeah, no, nobody's coming to save us. Our awakening is that's our salvation, and the ecstasy that comes through it. So I think, but yeah, waiting for others to save us, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, or going into the opposition, like the Satanic Temple. I hear that they just now actually received a church ship, however that's done. But this Satanic Temple, as far as I know, was a collection of kids that wanted to get their lulls. And so they crowdfunded a Baphomet to stick up in the Christians' faces in order to just, stick it in their face. And you're going to have this religious icon on this government property. We're going to put Baphomet up there, which then gave Baphomet a satanic taint, which Baphomet was actually designed by a neo-Catholic,
Right.
Eliphas Levi. But now they've been legitimized as a church when it was really just for the lulz. But yet at the same time, they've been taken over. You know, they're an interesting kind of study of a forming new religion, the Satanic Temple, because it was never a religion to begin with. You know, it was just a group of kids wanting lulz. And then they started to get infiltrated. And even the... Man, I lose how many letters I need for that. The LBGQ community really took up on this Satanic Temple, and now it's an official church, because you could always set them aside from the Church of Satan and say, well, this is just a group of kids getting their lulls, where the Church of Satan actually has established themselves. But now they've established themselves. But what's going to happen with that cult, I wonder.
Oh, I don't know. I don't see anything good coming out of them. Again, I think you're right. I think you can't play with these symbols and archetypes and not expect a blowback or to tap into it. One, as you mentioned, they've already warped who Baphomet is, because, like you said, it was created by somebody who was inspired by Judo-Christianity. Obviously, the Knight Templars and others too. It's a pagan. You could say it's as much pagan as a Judo-Christian, and it has nothing to do with whatever Satan or satanic movements are today. I guess they could make an argument about Luciferian and all that. But again, playing with these symbols is probably not a good thing. So I see it two ways. Or three ways. Either they really at the top believe this stuff and they're trying to be ironic so they can get as many converts as they can. And again, religions need the power of their worshipers to thrive, and so do the gods behind them. Two, they again are playing with ancient symbols that will probably be released onto the world. Or three is they are atheists and they're creating this sort of mock religion. Behind it, there might be a force that will eventually lead a lot of people to nihilism, because unfortunately that's what new atheism tends to do. I don't see them as much as humanists. So not a big fan of what they're doing today, although I don't mind Satanists or Luciferians, Temple of Set people, and all those. I've met a lot of them. A lot of them are very good people. A lot of them are very holy in the work they do, but the Temple of Satan right now, not a fan.
Yeah, exactly. And I stand by that too, and it confuses a lot of people when I tell them how much I love Rex Church. He's just a great person, and I hate to even say that on the air because I worry about Rex getting a bad reputation of being a good guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's awesome, and those type of thoughts, those type of individuals that really are artists that want to manifest themselves on this plane, it's a matter of shock value, really, to try and just get people to move into another mindset, because we can see clearly that what's going on is not going to work, and we're just moving towards this inevitable doom. And like I opened with NASA, they had a big conference just this week about the incoming asteroids and the end of the world, and we got to deal with that. We got to sit back and deal with that.
Yeah, but NASA, it's like, what does it? My friend says that it stands for never a straight answer.
Never a straight answer.
Yeah, they lie so much. It's like reading the New York Times or the Washington. You're like, I don't even want to believe you, even if you're telling me the weather, because you've been compromised and bought out. There are forces with agendas that have used you as their mouthpiece. I just can't. It's almost like I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the mass media. I'm tired of NASA.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired. You're not even amusing anymore. You're not even inspirational in a delusional way, because you've just run out of tricks. So it's a sad state, but maybe it's just my state of mind that's become so cynical that.
Well, that's what I mean, though. That's what pushes people into a Heaven's Gate cult. And we got Werner von Braun's idea that the Red Scare, then terrorists, then asteroids, then aliens, to bring about the New World Order. And so the social engineering concepts of bringing the end of the world. I mean, dystopia, the apocalypse, it is like the most. Our clothes are set for it. Our movies are constantly this.
And they don't have any imagination. It's like, could you have thought something better than bring Reds under our bed again and using the Russia as the boogeyman? Or, okay, we're moving away from the Muslims. No, I think we're going to start vilifying the Muslims. They're good bad guys. I mean, they don't have any originality. They want us to be their boogeyman. I mean, obviously, divide and conquer and controlled opposition is how these forces from above operate the elite. So they got to keep us always in a state of tension and false dialectics. But again, they don't have much imagination. I honestly thought if there was anything, and maybe this whole vaccine thing is they've never done the mass virus killing people, and therefore we must bow down to them and live in cities and put whatever drugs in our bodies to be safe. I'm surprised they haven't tried that, but it could be going that way.
Yeah, it looks that way. The whole measles thing going around now.
And the vaccine things and what they're going to put in our, what kind of shots they want to give us and all that. But of course, a lot of it is just good old-fashioned eugenics, right? Population control, get rid of the undesirable. That's usually where it leads to, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. Yeah, they'll be like, well, we'll need to aerosol this, and so it would be coming in your chemtrails.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry, we're doing this all for your benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying they haven't thought of it. Yeah, they haven't thought of a mass culling of the population. But obviously, if you want to think of chemtrails or all the aluminum in our water and all that, I'm sure they're trying different ways to, again, numb our brains. And they might not even need that. I mean, all they need is television and social media. That'll numb our brains, or the brains of the population, where they can't do anything. You ever see that movie Serenity?
Oh, yeah.
Not the recent one, but the other one with Josh Whedon.
Yeah.
Firefly. Yeah.
Firefly, yeah.
Remember what the plot was? They tried to put all these, they terraformed this planet and put these chemicals to make the population more docile, and they just died. Everybody lost their spine, their elan vital, and just sat there and died. So, so that's a very presaging movie, I would say.
Yeah, you ever notice that they canceled all the sci-fi series that have Chinese as the high language?
No.
I've seen
that
3.
was one, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
What are the other two?
The other one was Defying Gravity is the one that I remember. It did not last very long. I really liked it for the first few moments that it came out. You know, there was only like 5 episodes before it got canceled. Firefly, of course, being another where Chinese Mandarin was. I had a Mandarin friend or a Chinese friend that would, I'd try to get him to translate it for me. Like, what did they just say? But I'm a huge sci-fi buff. I really am. I love sci-fi. I think it would freak people out if they knew. But if you take where we're at, and people that are listening to this show who, get a lot of bad news every day, we're learning bad things all the time, and our world feels like it's constantly falling apart, and we try to find out where we're going with all of this. And so I guess my question now is, how could we use Gnosticism to the benefit of all of this? Would we start gathering together in different groups and study, or, how would this help? Because we've taken a lot of heavy stuff. We're all thinking about chemtrails. We can't walk out our door without feeling like it's the end of the world.
Right. I would say I would always advise somebody, don't go into Gnosticism or Gnosis, because it's a brutal path. I mean, you look at Neo in the Matrix taking the red pill, things kind of went downhill. Things got really bad before they got better, and that's waking up to the world. It's like Plato's allegory, which I feel is very much an ancient Gnostic tale, where you're in this cave and all you see is puppets by some people with the fire making puppets, and you think it's real, and one person escapes and he sees the sun, and the sun is so painful in his eyes. That is what is awakening. Before that, you're sort of numb. So I always say Gnosis is sort of twofold. One is the realization that you live in a fabricated world, that you're controlled by higher forces. Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's archons, but you're basically a slave, and a slave of your mind. Your mind is a construct that's been built over your higher mind to keep you sedated, numb, and ignorance, that greatest of all sins, as the Gospel of Philip says. That's how the Christian Gnostic saw the world. Ignorance is a great sin. But you see the world as it is, and intellectually you have to start breaking down the world. I mean, I always tell people the best way to start in Gnosticism is simply say everything you've been told is a lie, and never accept the official narrative of anything. your school, your parents, your government, and certainly not your ego, because that's been programmed and constructed. So that in itself, that deprogramming, that's a hard journey. And of course, that just knowledge is power, gnosis is power. That takes continual education, continual forms to keep a clarity of mind, whether you need to clean your body, whether you need to exercise or meditate or just read a lot of damn books. That's to clear your mind. The next one, of course, is the as I've talked about, is that experience, that ecstatic shamanist experience. When you feel gnosis, certainly as the Gnostics and I have, you feel that there is something beyond this world, a home. There is a higher intelligence that you've always known was there and you've missed, you've longed for. So how are you going to reach it? And that again takes the idea of traveling outside of your body through some sort of ecstatic ritual, some sort of astral travel, and making contact with this higher intelligence, until that intelligence, you can draw the forces of this intelligence and it can transform your body, your soul into. So these two ways, I would say, is the way to do it. Now, that's the thing why Gnosticism, it's so hard, because again, to take a drag of the cigarette, it's so hard because there was no one size fits all formula in any of the Gnostic texts. They wrote a lot of different stories, myths, and rituals. When you look at how they practice, some of them would do entheogens, some of them would do sex magic, some would do sacramental things like going to church, some it was meditation. There was even one where they would just sit around and talk about their problems. 2,000 years, they're just talking about their problems. So what they were saying is, look, you're a unique person. You have unique views. Your program is unique. Your spiritual desires are unique. So we're not going to give you the formula. You have to find the formula. Just know these two things. You're trapped in a false world, a fabricated world, bad software, and you can make contact with something that is big. You can make contact with this infinity that is really within you, because as I always say, the journey into self-knowledge is the same as the journey to the next star. That's how far it is. And whether you can say you're going it or you're going out, it's really the same thing, because again, as the Hermetics say, we're not just in the universe, but the entire cosmos is within our heads too. We both kind of house each other. We both are integrated with each other, especially the divine parts. So that's another thing. We really are embedded in this world, or our divinity is embedded with the other divinity. So, and the human mind, it has unlimited potential, but it has to be for our growth, for our experience, and ultimately for the benefit of others.
I could see where being a nomad would bring about this mindset quite quickly, in that you would consistently run into these synchronicities that make you believe there's a higher power. I lived it. I knew and now firmly believe that I'm part of something greater. But at the same time, I've settled into my place. I don't have synchronicities occur anymore. I'm not out in the world being a nomad. So there are highs and lows in all of this, but you get to touch it as a nomad when you find, the perfect food, the perfect shelter, the perfect things come your way as you need them. And it makes you feel as if there is a higher power, because there's no way that could have worked out so perfectly in some other way. But then there's also the drop off where it's all gone and you're not feeling that anymore at all. And, you're kind of stuck in your own cycle. And this is where most people are. Trying to break out of their own cycle is nearly impossible. I generally had to quit my job, stop paying rent, just if I was paying rent, and just leave everything in order to go and find that sensation of the miraculous.
Mm-hmm.
And not many people are ready to do that.
No. Again, we are programmed. We have been beaten down to play it safe. I think what you said, the nomad, reminds me of there's like two sayings in the Gospel of Thomas, that ancient text, because it doesn't talk morality much, but one of them is become a passerby, which means always be a traveler, is that old Sufi saying, life is a bridge to be crossed, not built on. And the other one where people are asking Jesus, oh, what about morality? What should we do? Observe the Sabbath and yada, yada, yada. And Jesus says, he says 2 rules. He said, do not lie and do not do what you hate, because all things will be disclosed under heaven. He's basically saying, be yourself, be authentic, be honest with yourself, and be honest with the world. If you can do that and find your strengths and how you're useful and what you need beyond, again, remember I talked about all the programming you got to get over, then you're going to be fine. And I think I would say the Gnostic way and would be, one, try confronting a fear every day. Try facing your fears or do something you're afraid of, because if everything's this sort of a bad software, this matrix, you're going to find out it's not real and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just been constructed to keep you down. And the other thing too is the Gnostics certainly were very much poets. They were artists. A lot of the sects certainly created music, or they painted, or they would write these long form poetry and all that. I'd say if we are a reflection of this divine, this beautiful mind outside of the cosmos, then the way to fulfill our divinity beyond these ecstatic experiences is to create art, to create something better than this world has left us. I always like to say on my show, we're here to create better than the creator gods and their butt slaves in the establishment. And I think that's one of the ways out, is that saying that goes, I forgot who said it, an artist is not a special type of person. Every person is a special type of artist. I think that's where the game is, and that's how we beat the archons in this world.
Hear, hear. I'm all for that. I've always considered everything I do to be art. It's never once been occupation or a job, it's all art to me. But I definitely learned that I could not perform these miracles for my own needs. Like, for me, it seems so much more in the frequency of things to be helping others. If I needed to help somebody else with this situation, I could get it done without problem. I would find the means. And, I actually watch a lot of survival shows, and these people out there on their own find this same type of situation, that here they are alone in the woods, and if they were there helping another, then it would be no bother for them to get it done. But to try and do it for yourself each day, to get up and do the things that needed to be done every day with you're out in survival land, doing it for yourself just didn't inspire enough to get you to do it. But helping others brings you out so much more.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. I mean, I talk about how the Gnostics were part of that ancient Judeo-Christian idea of compassion and piety and helping the poor. But it reminds me of when, I think, as many researchers have seen, Philip K. Dick, who was heavily influenced by Gnosticism, what he saw would make us divine, what separated us from machines and a lot of other life forms, was our ability to have empathy. I mean, I know a lot of more people have seen the movie Blade Runner than have read the story that's based on. God, what's the story here? Electric sheep. Yes. Do androids dream of electric sheep? But in that story, Dick's very insistent, and of course that's also his warning against AI and transhumanism and robots and all that. But he posits that all these other replicants are unable to have empathy, and therefore are not really alive and not really conscious. So he thought humanity, that was the great hope. It was our ability to have empathy. That's really what made us divine in the end. And I think that's what the powers that be wants us not to have. I mean, if they can not only keep us ignorant, but if they can remove our empathy, where we become nothing better than these machines, then I think they've won the game. And when you look at the state of the world, the state of social media, how people are treating each other, I think Dick and the Gnostics would certainly have a good point. I know people say, well, the economy's good and this and that. And I'm like, well, if you look at addiction, drug addiction, suicides and all that, I think we are there are those who are crying out for help, and they seem to have no way out, while everybody else just seems to be more materialistic. Maybe that's what the Church of Satan would like, and eventually leading us to nihilism, where we have nothing to live for.
Right. Which is the perfect culture for a new world order to take over.
Bingo. Yes, I mean, it's not rocket science. They've been doing that for thousands of years. So, and again, we talked about how they'll bring out the Russians are bad or the Muslims are bad card over and over, and people will just buy into it. So why not keep using the same formulas if most of the population is asleep at the wheel?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting during the fire at Notre Dame and a shooting that they were not calling them Christian. They were saying Easter worshipers.
Oh, God. Yeah, that was...
It just felt like, you stir the pot with things like that. Immediately the Christians noticed that they were not being called Christians, and so all of a sudden they've stirred this pot. And you get all these belief systems starting to swirl around each other and never looking one way or the other. I mean, honestly, I believe if heavy metal and Christianity met together, they would be a force to be reckoned with. But, you can't get these belief systems to go together. I mean, there's just as much of a war on heavy metal and the sovereignty that it brings and that sense of power that it brings than there is on Christianity and everything else,
Yeah, again, it's that whole false dialectic: keep divide and conquer, keep all these tensions between different groups, and a lot of it, unfortunately, is engineered. Whether it's Christians versus Muslims, or this left versus right, and all that. But those at the top, certainly, what they're looking is ways to profit and ways to control with these tensions and this destruction and violence and all that. I mean, somebody, like they say, just follow the money trail.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's the whole situation. We live in a social engineered prison that everybody's afraid to leave. Honestly, Miguel, just 2 nights ago, I had the weirdest dream. And it just popped in my head just now. And I'm standing there, and these people are asking me in my dream world if I had smoked a lot of cigarettes. And I said, no, I had one. And they were like, well, how good is your resolve? And I looked around and I said, well, I'm standing in a jail without bars, aren't I? And I see how the dream people look around realizing there were no bars. And it felt so profound. I woke up like, what did that mean? What does that mean? What prison? What was I thinking? And, what's going on in my dream world where I'm so wise?
Well, yeah, the dream world is where your higher self is that avenue towards the world of myth and archetypes and symbols, the collective unconscious, as you would call it, where everything is as it should be and all the answers are there, that Akashic record. So yeah, dreams is definitely a way to go. I had this strange dream too yesterday. I was going down a hill or a mountain. I was so happy, and this snake came to me, and basically this talking snake with a woman's voice said, "You're never leaving. You're here trapped forever, so don't even think about it." And I turned around, and my children were bathing at a lake, and they were spitting out lizards and reptiles, and it was a heartbreaking thing, because it was almost like the snake was just telling me, "Nope, you're here. You're stuck in your crappy job in this crappy place, and there's no way out." And it was kind of weird, because in many of the Gnostic texts, the divine feminine, whose name Sophia, takes the form of a snake, or sometimes Jesus takes the form of the snake in the garden. So it was, to me, it was disconcerting.
Yeah, that would be heavy. And I think most of us do feel that way, but we also have this incredible gnosis, if you will, this internal drive that tells us we can make things better, and it just keeps us going. Like, we learn this stuff so that we can transform ourselves, to transform the world, make it a better place than where we left it. But yet the hope, the isolation is the loss of hope and the isolation are really starting to come around and coming hard. And it's it's a time where people are going to have to make that big choice. Is there an asteroid coming? Does it matter? If you found out that asteroid was hurtling towards planet Earth, what would you change? What would you do today if you knew that you were going to die next week? And these are big, heady questions that should drive people out. Hopefully, in my opinion, like something like the doomsday fear of that will drive people not to Heaven's Gate, but out their doors, just to go live and go find what they're missing on planet Earth.
Yeah, that's the big challenge, right? Sometimes when I'm in my ego, I haven't had a drink in 20 years or marijuana. I always think, well, if it was the end of the world, would I just get shit-faced to just go out? But in other times, I realize, no, I think this would be the time to really love those that I should be loving hard. I think that would be the best thing to do, and give my gratitude to those who are around me that were there and influenced my life. I think there was a Sufi sheikh, and he's still around. I forget the name of the book, but he said, if you want to live the best life, just wake up in the morning and say, today I am going to die. There is no God but God. And if you believe these two things with all of your heart in the morning, you're going to have the best day in your life, because you're going to live it at its fullest before it ends.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about your books, Miguel. I want the audience to know of all your stuff. I mean, you go from Gnostic wisdom to fantasy and fiction. So
Same thing, man. It's
promo.
the same thing. It's all sci-fi, man. Yeah.
Right.
No, I have 2 books, nonfiction, Voices of Gnosticism and Other Voices of Gnosticism. And they're both my writings plus the transcripts of some of my interviews. And we're talking some of the best scholars in today in Gnosticism and Western esoteric, including translators of the Nag Hammadi Library and other Gnostic Gospels. Some of the leading scholars on Philip K. Dick, William Blake, Carl Jung. I mean, experts on these Gnostic sages throughout history. And then I have sort of my fiction stuff, which is I have 2 futuristic vampire tales, Stargazer and Heretic, as well as sort of a traditional, more or less fantasy novel called The Executioner's Daughter. So if your listeners will go to The God Above God, go to the book section, they'll find it. Of course, they'll find there my latest podcast, my blog, social media, how to contact me, just all this other wonderful heresy if they so choose to go down that rabbit hole and take that red pill.
Absolutely. And I mean, can I ask you why you do this? Is there an answer to that you could give in the next 5 minutes or less?
No, I don't know. I wish I would.
I don't think I can answer that either. I just
right. I mean, yesterday I was talking to a producer of the show Ancient Aliens, because I'm thinking of having him on my show, and he might need some help with some work he's doing on the Cathars. And I was telling you, I don't know why I got this call. That's what it was, a call. I wish the call had been to be a Lexus salesman or a podcaster of Catholicism, something that made more money and more security. And it wasn't so hard to grind out. The spiritual growth is brutal.
Right.
But for some reason, I had a call in 2000. I had an interest in 2005 and 2006, a mixture of an extraterrestrial experience, an ayahuasca trip, and some other stuff like reading Philip K. Dick and watching Donnie Dark. It was like a combination that I said, I have no choice. I have to go down this path. And it's, again, I'm glad it's brought me freedom. I'm glad it's brought me truth. But all in all, it's been a brutal path. That's why I tell people, if sometimes, like you talk about, sometimes staying in those bars might seem better. And of course, I'm just kidding myself. I don't want to be in like you're talking about the prison where there are no bars, but I have just decided I'm going to be trapped there for life. I want to know what's going on, and I know this will resound in infinity. This will resound in other existences. And at the end of the day, the most important thing I could ever do, as I was talking about, is to love and be grateful to those around me, and to help wake somebody up, to help somebody else find the path that they need to take to find themselves and to find a better existence.
Well, believe that, folks. You leave ripples in the universe.
Amen.
So live large, live well, and let's help one another. And that's the only path out of this crazy madness as we battle the archons. We must battle ourselves. And once we get through ourselves, that's when we separate and become free. If the serpent will absolutely let us leave. Who knows?
That was well said. I think you said my whole interview better than I did in 2 minutes, man.
Well, thank you, Miguel. And yeah, guys, thegodabovegod.com is the website. And as always, I have to thank Steve Mercer for pulling all these great shows together, keeping it all in sync and doing all the good work behind the scenes there. So if you want to write Steve, write him at producer Steve at freemantv.com. Get your guest in, get your thoughts in, tell him what you're thinking. And you can write me, Freeman at freemantv.com. Members, if you're having any issues like figuring out RSS feeds and things like that, I'm still a novice as well, but I think I'm a little superior novice on RSS feeds. So, if you're having trouble, members, getting to the second hour, let me know and I'll help you right through it. But I think most of that works itself out once you learn how RSS feeds work, which, might take you a moment. But yeah, I hope, Miguel, you want to jump in the members section with me in a little while, and we'll talk about psychedelics, Philip K. Dick, and some of the crazier trips if you're down with that.
I'm probably gonna have to let you go, man, and I apologize. I have small children that unfortunately have to go to bed soon, and other material things that take up my attention.
I completely understand, and not a problem. That's the beauty of podcasting, as it only has to be as long as it has to be.
Yeah, but I appreciate the invitation. Perhaps another time.
All
This
right.
summer when there's no school and other things going on.
You got it. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, and it went really fast, so I think everybody's going to enjoy it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. Yeah, good job.
All right,
You know
guys.
what you're doing.
Well, thank you all so much, and we will see you next week.